welcome everyone to Dan Halter's studio visit. Dan Halter is a Zimbabwean artist, and he creates labor-intensive works of art that often employ both craftspeople and the language of craft in a conceptual way. An African proverb or saying may serve as a starting point, and language and text play important roles in his work. Weaving paper in the form of money, maps, and books is something that the artist has developed working alongside Bianco Ikete, a refugee from the DRC. Ubiquitous materials that resonate in some way. For example, the cheap Chinese-made plastic weave bags that have become synonymous with migrants around the world make up other works. Originally from Zimbabwe and now living in South Africa, migration and the complicated history of colonial oppression in Southern Africa inform much of his work. So I'm going to hand over to Dan Halter, who's going to take us through his process and practice.
Thanks, Leona. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay, so as Leona said, language plays an important part in my artistic practice. Local turns of phrase, slang, and African proverbs often provide inspiration for my work. I'm also interested in fonts and have created some out of matchsticks and another one out of matchboxes. So you can see in this work here from 2006, I've got out of matchsticks, the text, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog," which is a pangram. It uses all the letters in the English alphabet, and it helps designers see how a font works in a sentence. So that I also like the ambiguity of that phrase. And then out of matchboxes is A to Z. Another work playing on the idea that patience is a common name in Zimbabwe, and also the fact that people in Zimbabwe, you could say they appear to be very patient with all the turmoil that goes on there. And so this work here, Patience is a Zimbabwean, like the previous work, I mean, it's actually a kit to sort of start a fire, if you like. And the title "Strews a Fact" is sort of this Zimbabwean slang. Strews Bob, Strews Fact is sort of a slang way of saying it's a true fact. So that's some slang from Zimbabwe. This work here, Amakwere is a derogatory word for African foreigners in South Africa. The local South Africans can't understand some of the foreign African languages, and it sounds like birds going quiddy, quiddy, quiddy. And this work is made out of different colored matches from different hotels where they give away free matches. It's all thing that's dying out. But here I'm playing with the idea of Desmond Tutu's Rainbow Nation. It's supposed to be inclusive for everyone. And the title is actually Nkosa Indlala in Manyala, which means if we misbehave, don't blame us, blame our stomachs. So, and yeah, this work references the xenophobic violence in 2008 when a lot of Zimbabweans and Malawians and other African foreigners were attacked here in bout of xenophobic violence. And during that time, there was actually, some people were killed in a brutal way by necklacing them. It's a method that harks back to the apartheid era. It was reserved for impimpi, for informers. It was you put a tie around someone's neck and set it alight. And so this again is sort of a kit for a necklace, if you like, and it has the text, "Go home or die here," which was this brutal soundbite at the time. And here, another work where I've actually made Robert Mugabe's signature out of matches. His signature was actually the logo for a clothing brand for a short while. And so I was able to get his signature from that. And I've put this onto this dirty US currency that came into circulation in 2009. And yeah, this work talks about, I've given it this Shona title, Kuona Hutsi, which talks about seeing smoke, and it's part of the slang that came about during the crisis in Zimbabwe. Here, I've pinned a length of AIDS ribbon, or just red ribbon, that often people make that AIDS ribbon that you pin onto yourself out of, and this is just a single length of ribbon pinned down with hypodermic needles, reading "safe as fuck." This work here is it's The Wretched of the Earth, the whole book by Frantz Fanon, and with my assistant Bianco Ikete, we wove this book, leaving part of it unwoven, as you can see. And yeah, I've woven several books in this technique. So for instance, The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, Animal Farm by George Orwell. This was one of the first woven works I actually made. This one I made by myself in Zimbabwe in 2005. My mother was working at the independent newspapers at the time, and she was able to get a list of all the farm names, all the names of the farms that have been taken from white farmers by the Zimbabwean government as part of the fast track land reform program. And that list of farm names I printed onto a map showing the different farming regions in Zimbabwe. And the only place where I could actually do a large-scale print like that at the time in Zimbabwe, because there were no sort of art printers, was ironically at a ZANU-PF-owned architectural firm on a CAD printer. So printed out that list of names, and then I wove George Orwell's Animal Farm. That book I shredded, and I wove that text into it, leaving this bit of text in the middle saying no one is perfect. You can see a detail. It's inspired by these woven grass bowls that you find in Zimbabwe. Here you can see the bowl that inspired that particular work. Cameron Platter actually exhibited this work when we were students at Michaelis, and he later gave me this. And this is actually a work that this is another work by me now. I've actually scanned the basket and woven the scan out of paper. So playing with this sort of trompe l'oeil kind of technique. Let's go here. Then perfection. This is a black light or a neon light, makes white things shine. And it's perfection without the R. So it's actually misspelt. I was inspired to make this work when I saw a cushion up in Zimbabwe showing a bus embroidered on it. And actually this perfection is a soap, perfection soap. They sell these green bars up in Zimbabwe, and they misspelt it on the cushion, and I found that quite funny. So made this work up inspired by that. And then here I've woven the whole of the South African Constitution. That's a detail. And this is the Zimbabwean Constitution. So Zimbabwe created a new constitution in 2013. There's a great documentary called The Democrats, which shows how that came about. And the two political parties couldn't agree on the terms. So it was decided that certain clauses would only come into effect once Mugabe was removed from power, and hence the bottom is actually unwoven. So at the time I made this, he was still in power, and yeah, the constitution wasn't quite finished, if you like. Here's a small woven text playing on the idea of the smooth and the striated, which is this theoretical writing by Deleuze and Guattari. Then expressions such as all of a sardine, play on all of a sudden in Zimbabwean slang, led to a work like this. This is a Lake Tanganyika sardine or a kapenta, which is a common foodstuff in Zimbabwe, and it's mounted onto a piece of Rhodesian teak in the way that a Rhodesian might frame a large fish, or as in the bar, this was sort of this kind of Rhodesian bar aesthetic, if you like. And here you can see, yeah, kapenta at a market, a detail of the work. Then in 2010, we had the World Cup soccer that was hosted in South Africa. And during that time, I did a project. I was funded by the Goethe Institute. Together with Adam Davies, I did a project where we went to the border. We crossed the border. This is actually a soccer post in a field in Beitbridge on the Zimbabwean side of the border at a rural school. And we made a deal with the school that we would exchange this goalpost for another one. And so what we did is we took this goalpost and we took it into South Africa. And this is it in its new location in Messina on the South African side of the border. So we subtly politicized these two soccer fields so that there's a soccer field on the Zim and on the South African side of the border, each with a goalpost from the other country, and they're still standing there to this day, as far as I know. I saw them a couple of years ago when I was last there. So that was a conceptual artwork. That's Adam. And yeah, that's how we were moving the goalposts. When I made that work, I was looking at the Google map image of the region, and it was interesting to find the one township was represented by satellite imagery, but not by any map. And the other side had a map, but no satellite imagery. And Google, if they don't have the imagery, or if you zoom in too much, or if an area has been censored for some reason, then you have this text that comes up which says, "We are sorry, but we don't have imagery at this zoom level for the region. Try zooming out for a broader look." So that was that's what came up when I was looking for the one goalpost. And so I actually pixelated that text so that some of the information is missing. Your eye has to sort of create the information. So the further back you stand from this work, the easier it becomes to read. And so yeah, I played with that Google map text. And I did an even larger version out of paint sample cards. And so this is about 4 meters wide by about 2 meters high. It's made up of these different colored paint sample cards. And that's a detail of that work. Then another expression, I did a residency in 2010 at the Glenfiddich Distillery in Scotland. And in that part of Scotland, in the northeast, people speak a dialect or a slang called Doric. And a famous expression in Doric is "furry boots ia fa," to the point that Ian Rankin, the writer, he calls Aberdeen "furry boots toon." Now, "furry boots ia fa" actually means "whereabouts are you from?" So I'm modeling these furry boots with a furry sporan and this tartan kilt that I had made, specifically this tartan based on the pattern found on these cheap Chinese-made plastic weave bags that have become almost synonymous with refugees and migrants around the world, particularly in Africa. And these bags are often named after the immigrant demographic in a region. So they're called Ghana Must Go bags in West Africa because Ghanaians were forcibly expelled from Nigeria in the early 80s, and they used these bags to carry their possessions. In Ghana, they actually call them Efiwura Suume, which is Twi, Ghanaian language, for "help me carry this bag." South Africa, they're called Shangaan or sometimes Zimbabwe bags. In England, Bangladeshi bags. Chinatown totes in America, and in German, Turkenkoffer, which is Turkish suitcase, or Paulentasche, which is Polish bag. In the Caribbean, they call Guyanese Samsonite, so they're quite interesting sort of material that talks about migration. So, okay, then here, this is a pile of aid clothing. So a lot of clothing that gets donated actually gets sold at different markets around Africa. In Zimbabwe, when I was growing up, we used to go to Mbari Musika to buy clothes because there was often, you could find these labels that were very desirable and unavailable at any other shop. And what's interesting about these clothes is the different names that they're called. So in Nigeria, they call them Okerika Bend-Down Boutique. In Ghana, Obroni Wawu, Clothes of the Dead White Man. In Zimbabwe, Mupenzanamo, where all problems end. So these, I like the different expressions for this pile of clothes. So I made this pile called Clothes of the Dead White Man, Where All Problems End, out of aid clothing. Then,
hey Dan, Dan, sorry to interrupt you. We just wanted to let you know that you've got about 10 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to speed up a bit, sorry. All right, thanks. Okay, so another kind of expression. Here in South Africa, there's a slang China, like China for friend. You'll hear people say, how's it my China? And it's arguable that that comes from Cockney rhyming slang, China plate, my mate. So this is a China plate that I made, playing on the idea of Mugabe's or Zimbabwe's friendship with the East. So after the West put sanctions on Zimbabwe, Mugabe famously said, we have turned east where the sun rises and given our backs to the west where the sun sets. And it was this look east policy. So at the top of the plate, you'll see in Mandarin these three characters, and that's Robert Mugabe's look east policy. Here, another sort of expression that came about was Zimbabwe. Mugabe used to like to say, Zimbabwe will never be a colony again, to the point that this joke came about, Zimbabwe will never eat polony again, because I think polony is one of the few things that sort of rhymes with colony. And so this was an embroidered fabric I made. Then, yeah, the revenge of 400 years. This is a modified Italian expression. The original is the revenge of 100 years is getting its milk teeth. And by changing that to the revenge of 400 years, I'm talking about slavery and colonialism and how that, yeah, that sort of idea of some sort of reparations is relevant. And so here I've also displayed them in a slipper, because Zimbabwe and South Africa are the only English-speaking countries that put your baby teeth in a slipper. Other English-speaking countries do it under your pillow. Then many millies don't make sadza. It's an expression I am modified from many millet grains do not make porridge, made out of these heirloom maize cobs that I grew in collaboration with Oliver Barnett. Another maize kernel. Maize are etched with an African expression: when the belly is full, the brain starts to think. The oppressor as a child, heroin as a flower. This was inspired by a piece of graffiti that I saw, as if the oppressor was never a child, as if heroin was never a flower, by SEK, a LA-based graffiti artist, and that's Cecil John Rhodes in the style of a colon statue with a poppy behind his back. And then, yeah, this was a light that works with what's called persistence of vision. It sort of prints onto your retina, if you like. So when you shake your head, it says Yebo the one way and obey the other way. And then I think, let me just maybe get onto some of my more recent work. Yeah, that is too much. So it's going to change my... Okay, so on Arterari, can you see the sculpture that I'm showing? Sorry. So Arterari, I'm showing this sculpture of this woman. This installation was part of a show called Cross the River in a Crowd and the Crocodile Won't Eat You. I made this sculpture with the help of Pharaoh Mutidze, a Shona sculptor based in Red Hill here in Cape Town. There's a big Shona sculpture park. And he made this woman out of black springstone. He went up to Zimbabwe to get the stone and finished carving it down here. And
hey, sorry, Dan, I don't think the sculpture's showing on the screen.
Sorry, okay, hang on. Is it showing now?
Yeah, now it's showing.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so yeah, that's the sculpture. This was the installation with these two crocodiles. So this was made with the help of Pharaoh Mutidze, a Shona sculptor, Sibongile Tete, a Zimbabwean seamstress. She helped to sew the dress and fix those bags. And she also made the skins for the crocodiles. And then I also worked with Kuda Kuimba, who's another Zimbabwean artist who works with wire and beads, and he made the wire frames for these crocodiles and for inside the bags. And yeah, this is a recent work showing the different sort of colonial regions in Africa after the Berlin Conference, the Scramble for Africa. This work is on Art Harari. This is a short story by Doris Lessing. This was the Old Chiefs country. Maybe I can switch to, let me just see if I can switch. I'm just gonna, and then, okay, I don't know if I can switch to my to my tablet. It doesn't seem to work. So I'm just going to show you a couple more works here. Sorry to go through this quickly. So another work that's on Art Harari is this work here. Sorry. Sorry. Are you seeing, sorry, are you seeing the, so there's a, this is $100 billion agro check from Zimbabwe. These banknotes were released for farmers during the hyperinflation days around 2008. Although this banknote went into general circulation, and this is actually, the image of the note is made up of text, and it's made up of The Animal Farm, the whole book by George Orwell. And so that text creates the image of the banknote. And some other ones I've done is the Communist Manifesto, making up this Chinese yuan, which is actually also official currency in Zimbabwe. And during the lockdown, I did a coronavirus drawing where I wrote out the entire genetic code of the South African coronavirus. Did a woven version as well. And yeah, another work inspired by William S. Burroughs. The word has not been recognized as a virus because it has achieved a state of stable symbiosis with the host, and that plays with the idea of DNA being made up of the letters A, C, G, and T. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Okay. Should I carry on? I just went through it quite quickly, but I can keep going if there's more time.
No, it's okay. I think we've got just about 5 minutes left. So I wanted to just leave some room for questions. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
There's one. There's one in the chat from Roy Sakana saying that this is amazing. Just wanted to know, what was your residency like at Whiskey Estate?
Yeah, it was great. It was quite debauched. That was good. Is that a good answer?
There's another question. What is the significance of weaving in your work?
So when I started to make art after I finished studying art, I came back to art after a couple of years of working overseas, and I decided to make conceptual work in typically Zimbabwean modes of art production. And so weaving, I was inspired by those woven grass bowls. I like the fact that these bowls had words and expression woven into it. And I'd say now that I've been weaving extensively, I mean, I think there's a play with text and textile and texture that's quite important for me. I like the fact that the word, I mean, basically, like weaving, the first sort of automated weaving looms were the basis for the first computers. So there's a link between text and language and weaving and computing, and I find that very interesting.
Yeah, it also just reminds me of like the craft nature of some of the things some of the forms that you're using in materials. Especially I like this link with like craft and this tech aspect as well. Sort of like algorithms or something, the weaving.
Yes. Yeah, that's, I love that stuff.
Yeah. I was also just had one more question. I was wondering if you could talk about some of the humor in your work. There's some sort of like deadpan humor that I'm reading. And I'm just wondering how you think of that as a tool.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there is a kind of dark humor that springs up in times of crisis. And I mean, humor is a good way of dealing with some very hard facts. And I find Zimbabweans are really great at coming up with fantastic sort of jokes to deal with very dark topics. And I tap into that. I'm inspired by that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have one last question, and I think we can sort of end on the last question. It's from Mimi K, and they're asking, are you working on anything exciting right now?
Well, I've just finished the work for Art Harari, which is the large woven $100 billion agro check made out of Animal Farm by George Orwell. So excited about having finished that. Yeah, and then I'm looking at doing, so I've done this Chinese banknote out of the Communist Manifesto, and then the $100 billion agro check out of the Animal Farm. And then I'm looking at quite excited about doing a US dollar out of the Heart of Darkness book, and possibly something out of Things Fall Apart. I'm going to see if I can make a 100 Rand note out of Things Fall Apart. So those are some things that I'm excited about.
Yeah, great. I think that sounds really cool. And I think we're all excited to see those projects when they come out. So thank you so much, Dan, for sharing your work with us and for talking with us. And thank you everyone who attended the studio visit. I think I'm going to close the conversation now, but please join us in a few minutes for our next studio visit with Option Nyahundri.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for your time. Thanks.